face to face for the first time. Started. And the last.
We have no weapons of any kind.
Sigourney Weaver.
Has to die.
Alien 3. Rated R.
Welcome, everyone, to Cinema Arcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those worlds collide. My name is Steve Guntley, reporting to you from a dripping, chain-filled monastic prison. Very happy to have everybody here. And who's this here joining me, getting real close to my face and then sticking their tongue out and then moving away real fast?
The bitch is back. This is J-Ban.
And who else is with us?
Hi, I'm just Justin. That's just normal.
You're just a normal guy with a totally shaved head, covered in lice,
and a barcode,
And a British accent.
and a British accent. Absolutely,
Definitely not the guy from Hitman.
Definitely
Don't worry
not
about
the
it.
guy from Hitman. No, definitely a very distinct British character actor. Who's
Yeah,
easy to tell apart.
Why were they British?
It was shot at Pinewood Studios
Yeah.
in London, so they just cast locals.
Ease of
And
casting.
all future people are British.
That's true.
That's
Everybody
what
in the future,
Star Wars taught us.
and
at
all
least.
villains in the past are British.
And all villains in the future are also British.
Yes. And
So-
just sinister villains. Yeah, pretty much. The Brits get kind of a hard rap with that. They're either
Hard rap
they're
or
either like-
deserved rap.
I think it's historically accurate.
in the history of England, only Hugh Grant has been allowed to be charming, and that doesn't seem fair. That's a blanket statement that I'm pretty sure checks out. I'm going to check on that, but I'm pretty
Look.
sure I'm right. Welcome, everyone. Today's episode is all about Alien 3. We are continuing our series
Cubed.
on the Alien series, Alien Cubed, if you will.
Cubed.
Yeah, it does look very cubed.
There's
Much
th-
like ham, it's cubed.
Yes,
there's-
exactly. This
there's-
movie's all about ham.
There's 3 times the aliens? No.
Three
No.
times the ham.
There's
Yeah.
like one alien.
There's less alien. There's 3
Yeah.
times less aliens than in the previous movie. More so. I have kind of become like a weird pseudo-evangelist for this movie this year. This is my 3rd podcast in 3 months about Alien 3.
It's called Stockholm
A
Syndrome.
little bit. Okay, I talked about it on Sledgehammer Horror, where we were talking about my first horror movie, because, spoiler alert, this is my first horror movie. And then I talked about it with Scott Weinberg on his podcast Overhated, where I was defending movies that get a bad rap or are overly hated. And I think Alien 3 is firmly in that category. I definitely expect this to be a bit of a divisive conversation. I know I'm still a little bit in the minority with my opinion of this movie. Some people are coming around to it. Some people are eventually coming around, but I think a lot of the problems with this movie were due to a horrendous production and just bad word of mouth from the
There's
press.
nothing like starting to film without a script.
You gotta love that. That's gotta feel really fun and really exciting for everybody.
It's called
totally-
improv?
Totally chill and normal. Yes, you definitely want to be improving with like a huge special effects budgeted movie.
Let's improvise an alien film. Let's go.
I mean, I think given the production that this movie went through, it's kind of amazing that it turned out as coherent and as effective as it does. That's my argument, but we will get into this. I think this is a movie that is kind of designed to piss people off. And surprisingly, that pissed people off. You would think, like, you'd be surprised. So to that effect, it's very effective. The rep of this movie at the time.
I said so and then took a drink of water.
Yeah, I
as
figured you were
do.
gearing up to something, but
This movie did 2 of the things that I hate about the way a movie can start.
Okay.
Specifically, a movie or media piece that happens right after another one.
Okay. Yeah, like
Where-
immediately picking up the story.
Yeah, where they go, hey, by the way, you know those people that were alive with you? Nah, they're dead.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
They're
They're just
dead.
dead because this script doesn't work if they're here. And then the next thing that they did was, hey, you know how you killed all the aliens? Well, you didn't. There's one left. It's on your ship, and it's causing a problem.
Yeah.
And then, like, the worst part is she goes to the disembodied AI robot of Bishop
Yeah.
and is like, hey, did the ship catch this thing on the scanners? And he's like, yeah, it did. And I'm like, oh, why didn't it tell anyone?
Because the company runs those computers and they want that egg to be there.
Why didn't they check before they went to sleep?
Yeah. And, like,
There's so many
there's
things
so
of,
many
like-
plot holes.
Look,
in
she
this.
was tired. Okay, that was a bad day at Aliens. Okay,
Then take a normal nap and then take a space nap.
Normal nap, then space nap. Everyone
Yes.
could agree. Normal nap, then space nap.
that's the pecking order.
Well, and it's just so ridiculous because, that's exactly why I hate like sequels that completely negate sequels.
Yes.
Star Wars, anyone?
Okay, I have a take on this.
Somehow
I have a
he
take on this.
returned.
Yes, I have a take on that for sure. I don't think that's necessarily what this movie is doing. But let's talk about a little bit of the production cycle, and then we'll kind of get into this, because this is a really noteworthy movie because this is one of the most famously disastrous productions in film history. They went through multiple directors, multiple screenwriters. They scrapped entire plots, entire set pieces. They basically redid this movie like 3 times. So the original script was written by sci-fi author William Gibson, who you might know as the author of Necromancer or Neuromancer, books like that. He wrote this to be a direct follow-up to Aliens. It was going to have a very similar tone, a very similar style, and it was going to star Hicks. The bold thing that script was going to do was that Ripley
Was not kill him?
Ripley is basically well, that, and also Ripley is basically in deep freeze the entire movie. The intention was this was going to be a part 3 and a part 4, and Ripley would come back in part 4. So that was the original shooting script that they were working with. The screenplay was ultimately dropped, although you can now hear it completely on Audible. If you download Audible, they released this as an audio drama. Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen came back and reprised their roles. And then they have a bunch of other cast members. So you can listen to this movie as like an audio drama.
That actually sounds very exciting.
You would think so. And then you listen to it and it's like, this thing's pretty fucking boring.
Oh,
like, I think this
no.
movie would have been really lame. But, you know, it's a very hard sci-fi kind of movie. So, like, if you're more into Star Trek than I am, then, like, it feels very Star Trek-y to me. But definitely check it out for yourself. It's worth listening to and developing your own opinion. But that script was dropped. There was a follow-up script written by Eric Red that would have taken the aliens to a small town on Earth, which, again, they're dangling that idea of aliens on Earth over us this entire series, and they never quite pull the trigger on it.
Welcome to Earth.
Welcome to Earth. David Twohy came in with another pitch about an industrial prison planet. David Twohy, of course, would go on to run all of the Pitch Black movies, the Chronicles of Riddick, all of those things.
Okay.
And up-and-coming director Rennie Harlin, who at this time is best known for Nightmare on Elm Street 4, was hired to direct. He would also do like Die Hard 2 and the biggest flop of all time, Cutthroat Island, which we will talk about on a future
I love
episode.
Cutthroat Island.
That's going to come up. We're going to talk about that one.
I love that movie.
I've never seen it. I'm excited to watch it.
So good.
Yeah, I've heard people defend that one. But yeah, so Rennie Harlin was hired to direct, but he became frustrated with the constantly shifting script, and he walked out. So he was replaced by a New Zealander named Vincent Ward, who started developing a script set on like a satellite made of wood that was going to be a monastery. So these were all just going to be like priests floating on this like satellite made out of wood.
Space priests.
Space priests.
And the crew wasn't really crazy about this concept, and Fox was worried that the film would be too esoteric and artsy to be like a commercial hit. And Ward refused to make any changes, so he walked away from the project. And eventually Walter Hill and David Giler were brought in. They were like the original creators of the series, and they had to come in and like amalgamate all these various different elements into some kind of workable final draft. And each of the scripts that have developed so far were kind of sidelining Ripley. For whatever reason, they looked at this second movie and they thought, oh, that Ripley, she didn't really pop. You know, like, that's Sigourney Weaver. I don't think she's got it, you know. So they were trying to write an alien movie without her. But also, she also kind of didn't want to beat it into the ground, you know? So it was a little bit of that, too. At the time, she was kind of considered the only woman in Hollywood who could successfully open an action movie, like a big blockbuster action movie. And they kind of quickly realized that she's the heart of the franchise, so they coaxed her back into the role. They gave her a hefty payday, and she had a couple of caveats. Firstly, she wanted the movie to be completely fresh and unique and couldn't repeat anything that was done before. So she wanted somebody who was going to have a very distinct style, who's going to come in and kind of continue the cycle that these movies have been setting up of each one feels dramatically different from the one that came before. She also said the new movie could not have any guns in it. She's a staunch anti-gun advocate, and she didn't really like the super militaristic nature of Alien 2, so she really wanted this to be a no-gun movie, both politically and because that would be interesting as a plot dynamic. And then finally, her final agreement was she would only agree to come back if Ripley died at the end. She did not want to keep playing this character in perpetuity. Like every time she wakes up, she's in another monster-fueled nightmare. Like she just wanted to let the series end on a grace note. So it was around this time.
Is there a fourth movie?
There's a fourth movie. We'll get into that. We'll get into it. It was around this time that David Fincher came on board. So David Fincher, when he was hired for this movie, was 26 years old. He was emerging as kind of the hottest music video director in the industry. He worked with Madonna and a bunch of other people in these very flashy music videos. And he was looking to make the transition to the big screen. He wasn't super excited to take on this movie because it's not his universe. You know, it's not, he's jumping in on a franchise, and that didn't sound that fun. But they promised him total creative control, which probably did not happen. And they threw him in with the production already underway. People were on set and shooting without a director for 2 weeks before he showed up. So he had to kind of wrangle everything that was happening there. And because he was so young and untested, like the Fox executives went back on their word pretty much immediately. At some points they were saying, like in interviews later, cast members were saying that there were more producers on set than there were cast members.
That's what I've heard as well.
Like they were just, he was being babysat to oblivion. And you know, Fincher, as a result, you know, the studio insisted on these really heavy cuts that deviated from the film he wanted to make. And as a result, he has disowned this movie and to this day will not acknowledge it as like his work, which I think is overly harsh. I hope he comes around on it. But the experience almost killed David Fincher's film career. Like he almost walked away from the industry entirely. Luckily, he found two champions. Arnold Koppelson, who was a producer on this, who would end up producing his next film, which was Seven, which was a massive, massive hit. And Sigourney Weaver, who repeatedly came forward and said, like, no, this guy is great. The studio really hamstrung him in a really horrible way. And like he made the best out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
And the movie itself was a decent enough hit. It made $150 million on a $60 million budget, but this had cycles and cycles of bad press on it. Like everybody knew about how tumultuous the shooting process was. And when the movie came out and it was very bleak and nihilistic, like it made it an easy target. I think people really wanted to pick on this movie, which kind of feels like it's a bully in a way.
Also because it deserves it.
We are going to get into this. I'm here for this argument. Here's the thing I'm going to say. So I'm assuming you guys both watched the theatrical cuts?
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2010, the editor of this film went back and released an extended edition that's just called the assembly cut. It's not called the director's cut because Fincher had nothing to do with it, but this is the version that is closer to what David Fincher intended to have. It's 30 minutes longer, and it fills in a lot of the plot holes. Okay, the biggest plot hole, the biggest thing that the assembly cut adds. Do you remember the character of Golic?
Which one was that?
Golic is with the crew in the very beginning. He sees his buddies like get killed and like blood is splattered on his face, and they tie him to the bed because he's going crazy.
Oh, and he talks about the dragon.
He talks about the dragon, and then he just disappears from the movie. We have no last we see him, he is strapped to that bed, and we never see him. Golic is played by actor Paul McGann. Okay, Paul McGann was up and coming at this time. He was being tossed around as a possible James Bond before Pierce Brosnan got it. We just talked about Warlock with Richard E. Grant. He and Richard E. Grant co-starred in this British movie called Withnail and I. That was sort of a big crossover cult hit. And so Paul McGann was kind of a biggish name. And if you watch the credits, he's like fifth billed in this movie. And you're like, all right, why is that guy getting such high billing? It's because he has an extra huge subplot in this movie we learn that Golic is kind of the outcast amongst outcasts. Like the other prisoners don't want to be around him because he's too crazy. And when he sees the alien kill his friends, he thinks he sees God. And he starts worshiping the alien like a god. At one point, there's an extended sequence where they actually manage to work together and trap the alien. And they're going to like just kind of keep it in this cell for a long time until it gets out. Golic comes in and lets it out.
Oh
Because
my
he
God,
thinks it's
so
God.
stupid.
Oh,
It's
fun
good.
fact.
It's
No,
good.
it's
Fun
It's
fact.
Stupid, but like
Stupid.
I
I'm
saw
glad they
that
cut
version
that.
of the movie.
you watched that one.
I watched
Okay,
that
you
one.
watched that one.
I was
Okay.
just, as you were saying this, I was pulling up my phone going, what was the duration of the one I watched?
Yeah.
No, 100% that's the one
That's
that
the
I
one you
watched.
watched. Okay.
So, man, I might have different opinions.
Okay, yeah. See, I always thought this whole area was really cool. It's really edifying for me because I never really knew why this character was in this movie and then just disappears. We also get to see a lot of what happens to like the other prisoners. Like so many of the
You mean
prisoners.
all the prisoners who look and sound exactly the same?
That was
that
one
was
of
a
my
complaint.
problems.
That was a complaint that people had. Like that
It turns out if everybody doesn't really have hair, it's kind of hard to tell them
And wearing the
apart.
same outfit and having the same accents.
I admit I'm like a film nerd and I love character actors. I love especially craggy faced British character actors. So this movie is just pure heroin for me. It's just like put more Brian Glover in my veins, you know, give me that Pete Postlethwaite. But you know, like I don't have too big of a problem telling them apart, but when I was younger watching this movie, that was definitely an issue I had, especially on like a low res VHS tape. But like this extended version does piece together a lot more of the plot. It lets us know these characters a little bit more, distinguish them from one another, and get to be a little bit more invested in their story.
At the cost of 30 extra freaking
There's other
minutes.
things like we also get to see more exterior shots of the planet that look really expensive and gorgeous, and like we get to the opening shot of
I
the
don't know.
assembly cut
I'm-
is
I'm-
Charles Dance walking on the beach, and it's crazy. And
I very rarely like alternate cuts of movies. I feel like you got one cut. That cut is the cut. Just deal with it.
I don't think I've seen a normal cut so far.
yeah.
I think all the ones I've seen
You always pick the
have
weird
been
one.
the directors or alternate cuts of the Alien movie.
Yeah, if it was a DVD, it would be like the "Whoa, brother" edition or something. They always have the stupid quotes from the movie. Yeah. All right. Well, let's a little bit of my history for this movie. As I've said on other podcasts, this was my first horror movie. I watched it at a sleepover after a friend's birthday party, and it scared the ever-loving piss out of me. Like I'd never seen anything quite this gritty
How
or
old were
gnarly.
you?
I was like 10.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah. And it was like my first experience with like gore and like this grime and this really cool visual style. And it scared the hell out of me, but I became obsessed with aliens after this. I don't know if you remember this, J-Ban. Around this time, they were like trying to like do an expanded universe thing with aliens. where they
Alien
were
toys were amazing.
Alien
And
toys were amazing.
They were so much fun, and they would like shoot things.
I
and, like,
had the little
spit
fat
things.
one that had like two little missile aliens in his chest that he shoots at you. Like you got all these different varieties of like alien action figures, and they were dope as hell,
They were
right?
dope. They were
great.
really cool.
And these never worked their way into anything else. There wasn't like an animated series or anything, but they were clearly trying to get kids excited about aliens.
Can't imagine. I know they floated the idea of an animated alien,
They
but
must have.
I just can't imagine an animated alien unless the aliens were suddenly like, oh, gee whiz, I guess I'm the fun alien.
Well, I think it would have been more of like a serious, almost anime style.
I mean, they would probably do it based on the Space Marines. I like your idea better. I want to see like a Ninja Turtles with like 4 radical xenomorphs like getting into trouble.
wasn't.
They were doing that a lot in the 80s. Like they would take hard R-rated movies and turn them into kid shows. Like RoboCop, Rambo.
Yeah.
RoboCop they had kids shows.
Yeah.
RoboCop was an animated show.
Yeah.
The Toxic Avenger had an animated show for a while. Like
Rambo.
Rambo, yeah.
Wait,
These
how
are
did
all-
Rambo defeat the bad guys?
I don't remember. I don't think I watched that. one.
Karate.
It was
Lots
like
of
a G.I.
guns.
Joe
Guns
style
were
thing.
still a thing.
That's fair.
You were still allowed to use guns in kids' cartoons back then. But yeah, no, there was this effort around this time. So Alien was in the zeitgeist, and I became very obsessed with it. I think 3 years later, I got, I call it my birthday of trilogies, because I got 3 box set VHS trilogies for my birthday. It was Star Wars, Die Hard, and Alien. And so I watched all 3 of those like box sets over and over and over
Some
again.
good Christmas movies in there.
Yeah, some good Christmas.
So
movies.
I definitely have a lot of affection for this movie. I understand it's unpleasant. I understand it's nihilistic. It's also a really visionary movie made by like a very young person who is facing
So,
a lot of adversity.
a lot of
getting this out here.
adversity. David Fincher is amazing. I'm not saying like David Fincher has done a lot of work that I really admire, like, and he disowns this movie, and I think that tells you all you need to know about this movie is that he disowns this movie because it's such a like. I can't get over, like, you start the movie with a child autopsy. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's very intense. It's very like, and then I don't know. There was interesting that they, Ripley had more chemistry with Hicks, but she ends up sleeping with Clemens. She just she's like, I'm almost dead. I need to like have sex with someone. It
was
like,
a bit of a deflection.
it
Yeah,
was like,
but
and it was just like, and Clemens is like charming, but he's no Hicks.
it's true.
And
However,
But
I
Hicks's
think it
head
would
was
be
squished at this
strongly, it'd be strongly frowned upon to have sex with Hicks at this point, due to the
he didn't
situation.
have to die.
He
Look.
didn't have to die.
Okay, I
This
can
is the
even get
interesting
behind the
thing.
fact that you killed the child because you didn't want to hire back a child actor, or you didn't want to.
She was aging out of the role. Yeah, she would have been close to 20 at that point.
Yeah, so I could understand that, but like to not bring back Hicks, like I don't know, like
They could have basically made the same movie with a double feature of Hicks and Ripley, and had those moments of like, especially when she finds out that she's pregnant with the fucking alien.
Yeah.
That would have made so many good conversations and moments between the two, leading up to when she finally decides to, solve the problem.
Yeah.
And also it could have been, an injured Hicks, so he's not like, Marine badass, so that he's not taking all of the
well,
action.
and he's not going to have any guns,
Yeah.
so like he has to use his wits, and they have to use their wits together. It could have been a really close relationship. That Hicks, they could have done so much with it if they had kept Hicks alive.
But this is my thing, I think. It's like, okay, Aliens is the escalation from Alien. You get one, and then you go to, like, thousands of them, all right? So where do you go from there? How do you elevate the threat even more? I love the choice to not do more, do significantly less. Take away all their weapons, put Ripley alone without any allies in the most hostile possible environment, and see how she fares there.
And it's a very as a lady, seriously, like, are we upping the ante by just having her surrounded by rapists? And the attempted, like, this is Ripley, and she gets nearly sexually assaulted, and some man has to save her instead of her saving herself. It is just such fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Such bullshit. And it is just like, oh my God. Like, I would have preferred if they were all monks and they just didn't like women, as opposed to this prisoner aspect. Because
weird prisoner kind of monk aspect.
It's kind of a cult. Yeah, it's a very monastic kind of setting. Like, I love the art direction with like these endlessly long corridors that are lit by candles.
So that being said, I will say I did like the aesthetic, a
Yeah.
lot of the aesthetic choices, and but also like the alien looked like crap in this one. The alien did not look good compared to the other two movies, which were a decade before, and it was like the shoddy workmanship. I will say the things that I liked about this movie is I really liked Dalton.
Yeah.
he's so charismatic.
Which one was Dalton?
The preacher guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, God, is that his name? Is Charles S. Dutton is the actor? I
Dutton.
forget
Or
his
maybe
name. His
maybe
name
I'm
is,
missing. Maybe I'm messing up Dutton with Dalton. I thought his character name was Dalton, but maybe I'm
Oh,
messing
why am
it
I
up.
blanking on his character name all of a sudden? Yeah, but no, Charles S. Dutton is amazing in this movie.
Yeah,
like,
so-
this is a good Charles movie. Charles Dance is very good.
Leonard.
Charles Dutton is
Leonard.
very good. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's great. I think Weaver's great in this movie. I think that this is a really well acted movie. I think overall.
Well, the acting is good. Like, it's just that the writing isn't there, and the pacing of the movie is very uneven. And like, we know all of this, we know all of the mysteries before Ripley finds out we know there's an alien, we know that there's she's got a chest burster, we know all of these things before she finds out, so it's sort of like it undercuts the suspense.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can understand that.
I also, there's just so many things where this felt like a movie that was stepped on by a producer. The issues with the alien not looking good, I imagine that was somebody without an actual like creative mind going, well, we've done this before for this other movie, let's do it for this movie. And they're like, no, let's do the thing we've been doing, and then getting overruled.
They introduce an interesting bit of lore with this alien, which is that so all we've seen so far are aliens that have sprung from human beings. And so now we get to see an alien that springs from a dog. And so the alien takes on much more...
Or an ox in the assembly cut.
Wait, it was from a dog?
Yeah.
I saw an ox.
You saw the ox version.
What?
Okay. The theatrical cut version, it's coming out of a dog.
There's just a dog chilling?
There's just a dog. One of the prisoners has a Rottweiler.
Oh.
And so it comes from the dog, and so the alien looks and behaves a little bit more like a dog, and that's why they kind of establish that going forward, that it's going to take on some of the traits of its host, which I think is an interesting kind of idea.
I'm perfectly fine with. Yeah. I just think that he doesn't look as scary, and like the CGI is really bad.
CGI has not aged well. Yeah.
Because I'm a puppet girl,
and that's
in that she is literally being manipulated by strings right now. Yeah. People can't see.
Whenever she goes in and out of rooms, it's awkward. But it felt like one of those decisions that was made by somebody who said it had to be done. Because I don't think anybody involved would have said, "Hey, this made the movie better." I think having a good puppet, having good practical effects would have been great. There's so many things where it feels like somebody was interfering with it, and it's my
there was
what you're saying.
There's a ton of interference. You can see it in like the fact that it's just like they're going in one direction, and then they take an abrupt left turn, and then an abrupt right turn, and then like all of a sudden they've gone in a circle.
Super cohesive.
It's one of the you're talking about the final kind of conflict with the alien where they're trying to like channel it into a certain place.
Before we get to the final conflict, I also want to go back to saying other things that I did like about this movie.
Yeah, please.
I love Ripley's haircut.
It looks dope.
It looks badass.
This was such like a. Do you remember this being like a big tabloid thing?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh my god, she shaved her head. Like this was the time when Sinead O'Connor was doing this and no one else.
Yeah, and it was very controversial, and it was just like sort of like a really like bold move for a woman to make. It's like to shave her head.
Yeah.
And she looks fantastic.
She absolutely does.
She looks so good in this movie. 6 months out of having a fucking baby.
That's the crazy thing. She
had
a baby. She doesn't just look at. She has to be sickly. This movie, which is it's a hard thing to play. It's especially in an action movie where you have to be kind of like she has to be under the weather this entire movie.
Yeah.
And she somehow looks like kind of frail. Like again, just 6 months after having a child.
And I did make fun of the fact that she just jumps into bed with Clemens, but I did like the fact that she like took charge of her own sexuality, and she's like, I almost died twice in in the last my experience 2 weeks. I'm gonna get laid.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta respect that.
But I did think it was funny that she was wearing more clothes in the post-coital scene than she does in like any other like scene. It was really funny.
Which I think does emphasize how just sort of functional that encounter was meant to be. It's like sort of like, I needed some endorphins. You'll do. You're relatively free of lice.
Well, and it's just like, I don't know, like you're relatively free of lice.
The assembly cut really goes hard on the lice. You see a lot more lice in that version. Yeah.
Are you joking?
No, I'm not.
No.
Are you?
There was a lot of lice.
There's parasites all over.
They're alien. They're technologically futuristic.
But
They
that's
should
why
have
they-
rid.
That's why they have to shave their heads and like wear like all the dumpy
Yeah.
clothes. Is because there's such a
man.
pestilence problem. on
There's
this place.
multiple scenes where it's just like they find something that's just covered in lice.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm really glad they cut that for the theatrical cut.
Oh, yeah.
Like
The first time we
I
see-
wish they cut
I'm
it from this
itching-
cut.
I'm itching right now. I can't stand like when you just
Oh.
talk about it. It's just like, oh.
Here,
no.
all right. I'm going to make some kind of general defenses of this movie and kind of
Okay.
explore a little bit about why I like it so much and why I defend it so much. This is the absolute opposite of what you expect franchise filmmaking to be. All right, like you said, like it is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a yes and. It's supposed to be like, okay, this last movie really worked. Let's do this again, but like bigger and louder and more violent. And they go the absolute opposite way. Like
They go
Any-
a solid no but.
So I
Yeah.
think they were going in the opposite direction, but they never delivered. If they had gone all the way back to Alien and they had a cast of 6 people, but instead you have a cast of like, I don't know, 25 people, of which 10 are bald British men
Yeah.
who look identical to each other. Like they don't. They wanted more kills so that they added more people, but that undermines the stakes. The thing Alien and Aliens does so well is they create personalities. We're like in the game, we're going to talk about it later, but it ends with the game over, man.
Right.
Because like that guy was so memorable. Everybody in Alien and Aliens are so memorable. And in this movie, we've got Dutton and Clemens, and that's about it. Like everyone else is.
Come on, yeah. You have Morse. You have 85. You got some great.
I
characters.
don't know
Not-
which ones those were.
We don't know who those are. We don't know who those are. And you're like, is this the ball? Like, and it's also hard because they look so much similar and so much alike, and they're all supposed to be, and they're not rootable. Like they're rapists and murderers, and so you're not rooting for them to succeed.
And again, this is the thing. This is a reason why I kind of prefer the assembly cut, because it does let you sympathize a little bit with these people. Like it's a very interesting setup. Like these prisoners are not just prisoners. They are a skeleton crew left behind in a mostly abandoned foundry. Their whole job is basically to keep the pilot lights lit and maintain the grounds a little bit. And they're trusted to do this because they formed a kind of millenarian cult where they are like abstaining from sex and violence and anything like that as a way to try to atone. Like they are in the shittiest place in the world because they are bad people, but they
not
do
the
have
world.
this one redemptive thing about them. They have found some kind of weird religion, and they are trying to make something a little better
Ish.
about themselves.
But they don't nail that because they turn out to be so rapey.
Yes.
At least one guy
Yeah.
turns out to be
Four
very Holt
guys.
McCallany.
Four
Holt McCallany
guys
in there. Yeah,
Four guys. That was a team effort.
It was. It was.
And then on top of that, like they make comments and stuff throughout, and so you really don't like. They don't necessarily have to be likable, but they're too hateable.
It's
and
fair. They're nasty guys. They're nasty guys.
Like-
but this is a movie that's going for a nasty vibe. Weirdly, like
David Fincher is notorious for having a very pessimistic view of humanity.
absolutely. I feel like
There's some quote about him thinking that everyone is like liars and perverts, or something like that.
something like and I mean that comes across, and like you also have to remember this is a very young man making his first film, and the fact that he's coming out of the gate like so strong with so much fuck you energy, you have to kind of admire it. Like
I
would find
definitely
it
admire
annoying-
the fuck you energy.
I would find it annoying if he was less talented.
I
Like,
kind
yeah.
of wish that there was a director's cut that was more of his imagining of it,
Yeah,
his
and
image of the movie.
I believe the assembly cut is like pretty close, but he hasn't disowned that. But he's also said like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, because like it seems like there was a lot that could go for it, but just some of the execution didn't hit so well. One, the casting, I feel there was a lot of not distinct enough casting. And just to double down on this for anybody who hasn't seen the movie is almost entirely shot in like mid light. Like there's no bright lights. It's all kind of dim.
It's very grimy. It's very industrial. It
Which
looks
is
very early
fine
90s.
unless you have a bunch of characters who all look alike, who all have the same haircut. And that is something that I specifically struggle with in movies.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, there was a few of them that I could tell apart. And they were some of the more notable ones, which was nice. But it was just so difficult. There was no, again, if they at least had different styles of clothing or something. But it's like the equivalent of if they went like the police had a description of bald guy, roughly this height, roughly this amount of scraggliness, and then called in a lineup for them to look at. And it's like,
I mean,
these people are hard to distinguish in dim light.
It's fair, but I'm pushing back on it just because we have the benefit of like some of these actors have broken out. Some of these actors, like Pete Postlethwaite, would get an Oscar nomination the year after this. I mean, Holt McCallany is on Mindhunter now. Like he's really great. Like there are some actors in here that popped eventually, and you could recognize them at least as like, hey, it's that guy's. Or enough of them have like distinctively craggy looking
Those are the
faces.
actors. The characters are all the same.
Yeah, the characters are all very similar.
I feel like the movie does a decent enough job of culling out the background characters and whittling it down to a skeleton crew. I think we care enough about the survivors.
Which we should talk about the deaths, because if we're going to talk about a horror movie, we should talk about deaths.
Yeah.
And I feel like they overplayed their hand, because I feel like probably the best death out of all of them, except for the Dutton's death, is the fan blade death.
That's the one that really fucked with my head when I was a kid. Yeah.
That one was exceptional. The other ones are they're just not that spectacular, especially compared to the Alien and Aliens, where you have people being stabbed through the chest. There's more blood in this movie. There's more gore in this movie than the previous ones.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like they're not like spectacular like deaths.
It's not like unique and interesting, like an alien coming down from above and then stabbing them up or anything like that. You really, it's just kind of generic. Oh, alien killed them.
Well, a little bit, but I want to go back to kind of the yes-anding element of this, because you shouted out Star Wars earlier.
Yeah.
I consider Rise of the Skywalker one of my least favorite movies of all time. It pisses me off to no end, and I think it's very, very, very different from what
we are in accordance.
Yes, thank you. I think this movie is very, very different than what that one is trying to do. Okay, so Rise of the Skywalker is kowtowing to the most toxic elements of fans that didn't like The Last Jedi, that didn't appreciate like a couple of unique twists being added to the formula that they loved, and then just like frantically scrambling to get back to what they need, whether it makes sense or not.
Nobody's problem was with the fact that twists existed. It was with the problem that every twist abandoned everything that came before, and it's like, no, we're going this way.
We're not going to turn
It's
this
not
into a Star Wars
But I'm
podcast.
saying-
We're not going to turn this into a
I
Star
could
Wars
rant about it
podcast.
for a while.
This feels very much like it's still within the world of Alien. It feels like this is a logical next step that this could happen. That if Ripley, we assume at the end of Aliens, because Aliens comparatively to this one feels like a pretty sunny movie, even though it's very
definitely
grimy and very violent and very action heavy, but it feels a little lighter than this one. We assume, because that one feels like so much more of a Hollywood production, that they're riding off to the sunset. And this one is very harsh. Like, no, they are still in an extremely dangerous environment. There are no guarantees. And like, if the alien doesn't kill them, then other things might still.
I think this thing, it's the Aliens 3 has possibility, and it doesn't deliver on that possibility. And I think that like the things I've mentioned, I feel a smaller cast, a tighter, like a cast with like stronger characters, not killing. I don't think they should have killed Clemens in the middle of the movie. Like I think Clemens, like they start to build a good relationship with Leonard or the preacher guy, but they.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look that up again.
Okay, but yeah, and it's just like they switch midstream, having like primary relationship.
They call him Dylan.
Dylan, I was Dylan. I was like,
Dylan. Yeah. Okay, that's why I was like, Leonard doesn't sound right, but yeah, sorry.
Okay, Dylan, and there's just so much that they could have done, like I feel like they could have cut 30 minutes from the movie, and then they could have made it like an infinitely better movie. And I think I do see, I'm feeling that they're a bit hamstring by Sigourney Weaver's demands, because like the thing about like killing the alien, the last section of the movie where they're like just running and doing maze running, like it's fine. It's fine.
I will agree. That's an area I struggle with, and that's like I think this is the one area where you really feel like, okay, Fincher's a first-time filmmaker. It's like you get what he's going for. He wants this to feel disorienting, but it's hard to shoot something on film as disorienting without actually being disorienting.
Well, and you don't understand the geography.
That's a big problem. Yeah, we don't really know what the layout of this is. Again, the assembly cut has a moment where they're looking at a map at the very least, and you can see what these tunnels are all leading to. But I agree that that's kind of a problem, that final climactic moment. And that is where you start to feel like some of these characters you didn't, it's like it's not so much that they look alike, it's that like I wasn't sure if I saw them before.
If you were Ripley,
and I am,
would you have said, sure, Wayland Yutani, get this guy out of my chest?
Oh hell no.
Or would you have thrown yourself into the furnace?
So yeah, that definitely is probably the direction I'd go. But it's like she tells that one guy, look, I have one in me. I can't survive.
Yeah.
And then when the time comes where it's like, it's probably a good idea to solve this problem, he's like, nah, fam, you got to do your own thing. And she's like, what the fuck?
I mean, no, he like, you know, he trusted she would take care of it because he had to stay down there and fight it. But like, it's an interesting choice to have the one survivor be Morse, who's almost like the comic relief character, to the point that there is a comic relief character. But they also give the one line earlier where he said he has made a deal with God to live forever. And he's the one person who walks away from this. Now, you don't get the sense that he's going to live very long after this because he's going into the custody of people who want to silence him. But there's an interesting little bit of like faith seeding, I guess, where like there's that little glimmer of hope, that little glimmer of like, okay, maybe we don't know everything, because Morse was not the strongest or the most capable or the most cunning or anything like that. He just kind of made it through, and all the most capable people ended up dying. But yeah, let's talk about that finale a little bit more, because this was built into Sigourney Weaver's contract. It had to happen. It was going to be a stipulation, and I do think it's the right move for this movie.
I think it's the right move for this movie, but I think it's the wrong move for this franchise. Like
we'll get into it next week with Alien Resurrection, which is another movie I feel like I might be defending more than it deserves.
I have very fond memories of Alien Resurrection.
It's
so
pretty weird.
Really,
it's pretty
like,
fun.
I'm super curious about like going back and watching it, because I remember so much of it and loving Alien Resurrection.
There's a lot of really fun stuff in that movie that I'm going to defend, but it is kind of a very final note here. Like, and it works for what they're trying to do with this character. This is a character that has been in this constant nonstop nightmare. Like, she even has a great line in this movie where she says, like, you know, she's talking to the alien and she's like, you've been in my life so long, I don't remember anything else. Like, this has completely subsumed her life, and she has to face the greatest fear that she's had, which is a recurring thing. Like, since the moment we see Kane's like chest explode in the first movie, and then you watch her reaction in Aliens the first time you see like a chest burster coming out of like that prisoner that's strapped to the wall, or that colonist that's strapped to the wall. Like, she is having such a visceral emotional reaction to this. So we go into this movie understanding that this is her greatest fear. It's true. It's happening. There's nothing she can do about it. And so she still needs to fight forward. And I think that's a really interesting way to still like make this character heroic in this very different milieu.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think I think it works with the movie. Like I said, I think it's a bad choice for the franchise.
I like that they're
I always
limiting
get-
a little
I
bit.
always-
of it.
So this is one of the reasons why I'm also like, not to get back on Star Wars, I get so annoyed when characters or actors are like, I'll come back to this franchise, but you have to kill me. Like, let the story serve the story.
Right.
Like, don't give these bullshit like caveats like to hamstring the storytellers. It's just like, I don't know, it's just really annoying.
But I also feel like limiting the franchise in this way was smart. And because I was thinking, again, we're going to go back to Star Wars, but I was thinking about Star Wars recently and thinking like the next generation is not going to think Star Wars is that special. Like our generation grew up with like Star Wars being like the coolest thing. It was because of the scarcity, because we had a 16-year chunk where we got nothing. And so we had to make up our own stories and kind of live in the world and develop it ourselves.
And the beautiful extended universe novels.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
They're
The
so
EU
great.
novels were so good.
They were
And
fantastic.
the best character ever introduced in sci-fi, Jar Jar Binks.
Obviously the greatest character of all time. But yeah, look, I think there's something to be said for scarcity, for rarity. You know, I think if we have yearly versions of Star Wars or yearly versions of Aliens, it stops being special. We stop giving a shit about it. Like Prometheus would come out like 14 years after Alien Resurrection, and then it would only be followed up one other time. There's probably going to be more Aliens in the future, but it still feels like few and far between enough that it still feels special.
The entire Alien vs. Predator franchise?
Absolutely. Both of them. Yes, including the one Alien vs. Predator Requiem, by the way, does not count as a movie because you can't see it.
I've never seen any of them, so...
You literally you probably have seen it and you don't know because it's all black. You can't see a thing in that goddamn movie. It's the most poorly lit movie of all
Turn the
time.
gamma up
Is that
a
the one with
little bit.
Adrian Brody?
No, that's Predators. This is Alien vs. Predator Requiem. There are no stars in that movie. It's real bad. That's a divergence. But like, I don't know. I feel like the decision to kill Ripley in this movie is a smart one.
I think it's fair.
You can keep making the movies without Ripley, I suppose, but like Prometheus and Alien Covenant don't really work. They've got some weird ambitions, and I appreciate what some of the stuff they're trying to do, but they don't quite work.
I don't know if I'm a defender. Like I don't know. I don't know how I feel about those movies because like I
forth.
love a backstory. Like I will read a Wikipedia page till like
Yeah.
the cows come home, and it feels like those movies are Wikipedia pages.
There's clearly like somebody has some kind of idea, some philosophical idea behind that movie, but there's a real lack of clarity of vision in those movies. Like I would like a little bit like to cut through the bullshit and kind of be like, all right, what are you trying to say here? Like what's going on? That's a digression, but like, I don't know. I still love how thorny this movie is. I still love how this movie is able to get under your skin in a way that a lot of like second sequels are not even going to bother trying to do. I appreciate that it's such a big swing. It doesn't always work, but like the fact that such a clear and specific directorial vision came through all this bullshit, like all the multiple script rewrites and the overwhelming producers and all the nonsense that had to go into the making of this movie. Something really razor sharp cuts through here. Like, and it's something that still has the power to this day to upset people and to kind of get under their skin. And I really kind of appreciate that about this movie. I'm not saying it's without its flaws. I'm definitely acknowledging that it has its flaws.
Have we mentioned the Weyland-Yutani Corporation's response? At first, they're like, hey, yo, shit's fucked. One of the aliens is here. And they're like, we'll be there in a week or two.
Yeah.
And then they're like,
Yeah,
hey,
take some
she's pregnant with one? And they're like, bro, 5 hours. I'll be there.
Yeah, it turns out we're much closer than we thought. That's an interesting thing, too. Bringing back Lance Henriksen to play allegedly the creator of Bishop.
Yeah.
Although there's some
Yeah.
ambiguity there, like especially again, I'm going back to the assembly cut because when 85 whacks him in the back of the head, in the assembly cut, Justin can back this up. It's fully clear that his ear is like straight up sticking off of his head. His ear is falling off of his head in a way that
Yeah.
looks robotic.
I don't think it makes any sense for that to be a human being. I think it has to be.
I feel like it has to be
an android.
Too. Yeah, but like his ears, like you can see it a little bit in the theatrical cut. His ear has fallen off his head after that.
Because like, why would you use the model for an android that like would actually be an important person in Wayland Yutani? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, I think it's probably another droid personally, but yeah,
I did find it interesting that in the Wikipedia article and in the IMDb they refer to them as Bishop 2.
Yeah,
and not just like the guy's name.
And they kind of retcon it even further. Alien versus Predator again is not canon, but like Lance Henriksen is in that, and I think he's playing Yutani. I think he's playing the guy who founded the company. Or he might be playing Wayland. I forget which one he's playing, but he is playing the guy who founded the company back in 2004, and now he's like a multi-billionaire. But it raises a lot of interesting questions, I think. I mean, I don't know. I understand this is not a 100% successful movie, but...
Well, and again, I think it suffers from following Alien and Aliens.
It
because
does.
Alien
That's
and
a high
Aliens
benchmark.
are so good.
Absolutely.
They're so good. They're like essentially flawless movies. And they're just so fucking good, and they're so tight. Like the stories are tight, the caricature is like the character development is tight. It's just like it like when I watch those movies, I feel amazing.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm watching a stunning piece of cinema, and this is not a stunning piece of cinema. It's not like I'm not making it like it's not terrible, but it's not. It doesn't live up to its predecessors.
Roger Ebert famously called it the best looking bad movie ever made. So I don't know. You might be closer in that camp, but I will always acknowledge its flaws, but I still have a special place in my heart for this movie, and I think it's due for a little bit of reevaluation, and I hope that people check it out, even if you have a diverse opinion as we do here.
Yeah.
Like I hope you check it out.
And like all the Aliens movies are available pretty much on Hulu at the moment, so why not?
Really? Yeah. Oh, I bought the quadrilogy DVD. Even though I hate the word quadrilogy, I got the word quadrilogy.
I like the word quadrilogy.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
I know it drives a lot of people crazy, but
well, shall we move on to the game?
yeah, let's move on to the game.
Let's talk about Alien 3, the game, which was various versions of it were released between October 92 and May of 93. It was developed by Probe Software and published by Acclaim, and this was released on the Super NES, the Genesis, the NES, the Game Boy, the Amiga, the Commodore 64, the Master System, and the Game Gear. Lots of different versions of this. We played the Super NES version for those who are keeping up with us. But yeah, there were several versions of this game released on systems that were functionally dead. Like the Amiga, the Commodore, the NES, and the Master System were not really heavily in production at this time. So it's interesting that they all got games. There's quite a big difference between the two big home console versions of this. We played the SNES version that has 6 levels and uses kind of a password save system. The Genesis version doesn't have the same system. It has 9 more stages on top of that, so 15 total.
Oh. And
bigger sprites in general. But the general consensus is that the Super NES version is the far superior game. This is kind of a weird amalgamation of... Like, this is another game that struggled a little bit with the weird production cycle of the movie, because some elements of these games are based on earlier scripts. So, like, the Genesis version is a 2-player game, and the other player is Hicks. You get to play as Ripley and Hicks in that game, and Hicks ain't in part 3. He didn't really get very far. He got a little bit into the opening credits. So this was still working on that operation, the assumption that he is alive. And despite Weaver having that very, very strict no-gun policy for the movie, that is really not present in this game, which not only has a gun, it has a triple gun that has a flamethrower, a grenade launcher, and a machine gun all built into
and
one.
And thank goodness it does.
Yeah.
Because you also have to deal with a lot more aliens.
Yeah.
It's not just one alien. It is like this game is crawling.
5 seconds into this game, you blast your first alien, you're like, all right, done.
Game over. Yeah. That was it.
Game over, man.
This movie would have been so short with a gun. Yeah. But yeah, this has kind of an interesting structure to it. Like the sprite and the environments are clearly like reflecting Alien 3, the movie. Like she's got the shaved head, and like it's clearly in the prison, and it's got a lot of recognizable locations. But it also has an interesting kind of mission-based structure, which you don't really see a lot in games like this at this time. So you start the game by going to a console, and you get to choose which mission you want to take on. They give you like half a dozen different options, and it ranges from like finding the missing prisoners who might be trapped. The prisoners are weirdly chained to the wall, which just occurred to me. Like, who chained them there?
Yeah, who chained them?
I had that thought immediately when we found the first one. I was like, how'd you get up there, bud?
Yeah. How'd you?
That's not aliens. Don't chain people to the walls.
No, not so much. They don't really
Did
have those kind of fine
did something
motor
get out of
skills.
hand here before the aliens showed up?
Yeah,
Or-
it's just a bad time for the aliens to arrive. But then you also have to like go to different areas and like mend different cracks in cooling pipes or seal off doors to prevent aliens from getting in. That's an interesting approach, I think, and I thought it was fairly well implemented. Like, it's an interesting struggle when you're doing kind of an open structure like this when you don't have an in-game map that's like readily available, but they give you a terminal that you can look ahead. You can look at the blueprints.
There are a couple of terminals,
There are a couple of
Yes, there's
terminals,
a few.
but you can't
that
just
we
bring this
found.
up at any time. Like,
which
you
would
get a
make the
terminal.
game so much easier if you
Yes.
could just bring up a map.
I want to point out the game looks good.
The game does look good.
For it being made in 1992, this game looks like it could have released on the Game Boy Advance.
And we were talking because this one, this came out at the same time as another cinema arcade classic, Wayne's World.
Yes.
And this
Party time,
this
excellent.
game is so much better than Wayne's World. It's
Much
infinitely better. It's got really fun. The jumping mechanics are a little wonky, but the shooting mechanics are pretty good. And the aliens are kind of tough to kill. They're not too tough, but they take like a hit or two to kill, and then they explode. But you don't have to worry about
Acid blood.
Yeah. Except for occasional
What?
occasional like just on the floor. There's
Yes.
acid blood.
What did
Yeah.
you call them, Justin? You call them drippy goopies or something? You gotta
like
jump over
drippy
the
doos.
You gotta jump over the drippy goopies. Yeah, the drippy doos. Yeah, no, there are some little drippy bits. Like, yeah, this is a pretty satisfying, pretty fast-paced kind of arcade-style action game.
The only complaint that I have is that there is, from what I can tell, no way to
Oh, look at him yawn.
Look at the little sleepy guy.
Sleepy guy.
He's a little guy.
Sleepy guy.
to save or resume from where you were at.
Yeah, this is
and
a
I don't
one
know
death and you're done
if
kind of
when you
game.
die you keep your mission progress, because we didn't really die after we started making it places.
Yeah, Justin solved our one and only mission. You figured out which doors you needed to weld
I got
shut.
2 out of 3.
You got very close.
Yeah.
You both got closer than me. Where I was trying to rescue the prisoners, and they're like,
And
"Nah,
if
I'm good."
If it had a reasonably solid way to handle that, this game could have released on the Game Boy Advance, and people would have been happy with it.
Similarly to the movie, I think this is a game that a lot of people have sort of reappraised. It's become a little bit of a cult favorite among fans of this particular era of video games. And I think it is a respectably solid game. Like, as a work of adaptation, I don't know that it really quite nails the
Yes.
vibe. Like,
Yeah.
we have the aesthetics here, but it is like playing Aliens in Alien 3 cosplay in a weird way. Like,
Well, I think they got the setting of the jail right, and
Yeah.
I feel like that goes a long way towards like setting this game in that movie because they've got a lot of the they got a lot of the setting.
they do. Yeah, no, they got the dripping chains, they got the junkyards, they got all the prison cells, like, and some even recognizable locations. Like, you go into the med bay at one point, you're like, oh yeah, this is where Charles
Yeah.
Dance got
I would have
killed.
liked to have seen some boss fights. I like the format of having different missions. I find it really fun way to explore the same map. And but at the same time, I feel like having like one of the arcade game that we played, the best part of it was the crazy bosses that came down the pipeline.
Those very much reminded me of the action figure line, like where we've got like, oh, this is a stretchy neck alien, and this guy's gonna shoot stuff. He looks like an urchin, and he's gonna shoot stuff in every direction. Like,
Yeah.
I think there is kind of a final like boss confrontation, but it basically just looks like a slightly larger version of the aliens you're fighting the entire game. So a little anticlimactic. But you do have this very versatile gun, like right from the get-go, where like flamethrower kind of feels like the default. I think that's just because where our fingers went on the control pad. We're like, I guess we're flamethrower people. But you do have the machine gun, you do have a grenade launcher, like all from the get-go. You don't need to like upgrade those or anything.
And this game does something that I like, and if we had more time to put into it, we probably would have felt a lot better with it. And it's that you're going back into, you're re-exploring areas.
Yeah.
And doing different things in those areas, which means that you can start to get a feel for things. You can start to get
for
an idea
example,
of the layout.
the med bay had an obscene amount of health.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Which made sense. But we also got a chance to kind of like, once we understood the structure, we're just like, oh, this is a weird looking computer terminal. I bet this is a quest later on. We should mark this for later. Or like,
keep this in mind.
When I was trying to save the prisoners, I clocked some of the cracks in the pipes, you know?
Yeah.
So like, and that's a different mission where you go through and weld those together. So
Yeah, and so to make it clear, the missions, when you select them, you start from the terminal, and it's the same place no matter what.
Yeah.
So you just back away from wherever you had accessed the terminal from, and you go do the mission. So it's kind of open world in that regard of like
a little bit.
They have this world. There is it's a little intricate in terms of how things are done. There's some famous platformer floating platforms. There's monkey bars into floating platforms.
And as a person who hates jumping, the jumping wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. It was a little stiff.
It definitely could have been better, but
I feel like the challenge level on this one was pretty reasonable all around.
Yeah.
It's a one life and you die kind of situation, but your health bar is pretty generous, and you can, like you said, you can go to the med bay and find like 130 health packs and like
Not 130.
enough to fill your health,
enough
but
to top you up.
The thing is about the difficulty level is that it's not difficult because they needed to throw in some fuck yous. It's just, the aliens sometimes will catch you when you're not expecting it, or when you're trying to do something else. And so, I definitely feel like they did a good job for this being 1992.
And they definitely nailed one element,
1993.
which is big flaming pits that I kept falling into.
Yes.
Which I feel like Ripley is just kind of drawn to it like a moth to a flame at this point. She's like, ooh, big flaming pit. Can I do a Terminator 2
That was
into that? I'm
actually
gonna do it.
in her contract for if they made a game.
A big flaming
was
pit
that
contract.
there had to be a lot of flaming pits so that the
Classic writer,
the whatchamacallit, the ratio, the distribution of places that you die at,
Yeah.
the flaming pits had to be high enough.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those are the big three things. She said, all right, no guns. I need to sort my M&Ms by color and put them in my dressing room. Also, flaming pits. Wherever you can fit them, wherever you can pit them.
And they only did one of those.
Sigourney Weaver,
Yeah.
I don't think we'll get to Galaxy Quest because I don't think there was a game.
There's not, tragically.
And she was 50 in
Yeah.
Galaxy Quest. She's just so
Looks amazing.
so beautiful, so talented, so nice. Like, oh,
I mean, just last year, she played a teenager in Avatar 2. Like, obviously, it was a CGI performance, but she embodied the behavior and physicality of a teenager. That's pretty crazy. Like, she's so good. She's fantastic. Love Sigourney Weaver forever. Well, yeah, I think, and I think that's about it about the game,
I
right?
think
Like,
so.
it's a little limiting because we have this one game to talk about, compared to all the different options we have with the other ones.
If you have the ability to play or emulate, or you're into playing retro games, give it a try.
Yeah, definitely.
solid.
It felt, especially for the year that it came out, it's one of the earliest games that felt like it really put a lot of things together. And it feels like it could have come out in 2004.
Absolutely. I think this is a perfectly solid little action game. Definitely
Like,
worth
if
checking
they
out.
just slightly higher resolution sprites, and this game would have been great.
Absolutely.
Great for 2004 or 2006, that era. But I absolutely could have seen myself playing this on like the Game Boy Advance or something.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been, especially if like I mentioned, the death mechanics made sense. which I don't know how well they make sense because, again, once we figured things out, every time we had died before, we hadn't done anything notable.
Right,
We hadn't
right.
finished anything. But, this would have been a game that I would have gotten and been like, oh, hell yeah, this is a good time.
But again, worth mentioning, the game over screen has an audio clip of Bill Paxton and Aliens saying
Yes.
"Game over, man." A pretty high quality audio clip, but it also kind of typifies like that this game has a little bit of an identity crisis. Like I think if you're looking for a pure piece of adaptation, this isn't it. But it's a pretty solid little action game for 16-bit players.
I would compare it to the DS game that we played last time.
The Alien Infestation, yeah. It's got some similarities.
Yeah, it's a solid side scroller. What do they call them? Metroidvania type
Yeah,
game.
a little bit of that. Yeah.
It's pretty decent.
So are we rating?
Let's rate because I think we're really
I
going to
think-
deviate. We've honestly had similar ratings pretty much across the
Yeah.
board on the show, and I think we're going to deviate here.
I think especially we're gonna all hate the game. Right?
Absolutely, yeah, we definitely agree on that. So each week we are ranking what we've talked about from the scale of good movie, good game to bad movie, bad game.
Unless you're like me and don't conform to scales most of the time.
Exactly, or we just make up our own shit in between. Like, yeah, we've got a scale in between. There's room for modulation. I mean, I'm gonna start off because I think I'm gonna be the lone voice of reason here. That this is a good movie, good game. I think this movie
Just because you're the outlier doesn't mean you're reasonable.
You can't tell me otherwise.
I'm
I've
gonna
made my case.
say
I've stated it multiple times this year.
the-
I'm making my case.
I'm going to quote Ebert, the best looking bad movie. It's a bad movie and a good game.
All right. Justin, where do you come down?
As somebody who watched almost 3 hours, I would say it's a movie.
That's more non-committal than usual.
Yeah, it's more non-committal than usual. I think it definitely trends towards bad movie. I just, again, if there is a lot of stuff there, and it just feels like if it's like somebody was doing a cross stitch and just like missed a few spots, so it looks mostly right.
Yeah.
Like me trying to draw a star.
What is wrong with your stars?
Look, I can't draw.
Every time you draw a star, there's a little girl getting an autopsy.
Oh God!
It's weird.
No, all
It's
my
dark.
stars are slightly lopsided. Look, when you can't see images in your brain, it makes drawing hard.
Right, this is the thing. I only this is a divergence, but like I only learned that this was a thing for people that they don't have like a mind's eye, that they can't like, imagine things.
I have like basically it looks like a shadowy outline.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you got this too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're
Do you guys-
together on
we're
this
together on
one.
this.
We've,
Do you guys
we've had
have
this
like an
conversation
interior
before.
monologue?
Yes,
You do.
And
Okay.
I dream in full, beautiful color.
Wordy
Okay.
is my internal monologue is wordy as fuck, and
Great.
Mine too.
Which I'm working on, and I dream in completely full color.
Yeah.
But,
Yep. The full gamut. I
like,
have
when
sleep paralysis
which is also
dreams,
really
stuff
funny
like
like
that.
I've done like costuming and like so it's really funny because like there's this image in my head, but it'll come up like in like little flashes.
Yes.
Well, and I can attest you are both like imaginative, creative people. Like it's not like it's not anything on that level.
That
but,
was
like,
one of the things. I have a certificate in digital media arts from my community college back home.
You have to say it like
and
that.
the graphic design class was the hardest. That and digital drawing on like a Wacom tablet.
Yeah.
Those two things were so difficult for me because I was like, if I was doing logos for my own thing, I would be fine because I know what style I like. But one, I don't know what the fuck anybody else is gonna like, and two, I can't do that mentally to like iterate.
It was definitely one of those like I only just learned a couple years ago that people diverge in that way, that like
Yeah.
I assumed that everybody had like this mind's eye and had this kind of active
No.
like weirdly
It's-
I don't dream at all. Like
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I
can I get that?
I maybe remember one dream a year, so
Oh.
that's I don't know, that's
I've been dreaming
that's the
a
trade-off.
lot lately.
I daydream. That's my trade-off.
I daydream, except my daydreaming is me just closing my eyes and then thinking through what if scenarios.
Oh, fun. Okay, so that's
and-
anxiety.
That's called anxiety.
Yeah, that's anxiety.
Well, sometimes they're fun what if scenarios. Like,
Oh, okay.
what if I opened a
Fun-sighted.
business? What about these logistics? What if I wanted to open a board game shop? Stuff like
Okay.
that.
All right.
But then also the less fun anxiety parts of like everything I've ever done wrong in my life.
Yeah.
What if things went horribly wrong? What if the project I'm working on at work goes terribly? I get a lot of that too.
I do have that file of like mistakes I made in second grade that just won't stay shut. It just pops open every once in a while and just like, oh
yeah.
hey, remember this? You're a stupid idiot. Yeah.
Like of all the things that I remember, that and Limp Bizkit trivia.
Oh,
Dear
that
Are
means
two things that I'd be
we're-
okay
we're
with
done,
getting
we're
rid
done.
of.
We're cutting that
Kinda
off
got
right
cut.
now. Well, thank
anyways.
you everybody for listening. I'm excited that we had such diverse
Did we
opinions
get
on
through
this.
everybody's
Like,
ratings?
Yeah. we did.
Okay.
No, I'm
Bad for we can.
I'm always excited when we have like different opinions on things. I like to argue and debate about these things, like I respectfully, of course, which I feel
Yeah.
that we did. Next week we are going to be closing out our little Alien deep dive, our longest miniseries yet, with only 4 movies, but still our longest one yet. We're going to be talking about Alien Resurrection from 1997, which means we have entered the PlayStation era for the first time.
Ooh.
We're playing a PS1 game.
It's definitely not the first time because we have played games that were on the PlayStation 2.
We played games
2.
past there. Like we
Yes.
played games up to the PS5, but we haven't played anything on PS1 just
I
yet.
guess we haven't.
Nope, we haven't.
So this will be interesting. I haven't played this game in particular, so I'm excited
Are we
to get
gonna
into
watch the Gran Turismo movie and pull out the original Gran Turismo?
it. We could do that. I still have not watched that movie. I hear it's
Neither
You're
have
the
I.
one who gets to pick the next one. After
That's
you.
right.
Oh
yeah,
my
Rob-
god, I do.
Well, we're gonna have. I'm gonna let you guys know now. We're gonna have a month of holiday themed movies and games for
Ooh.
December.
Okay, I'm
and
not
then
picking
January,
during that
first
month.
week of January is a
Is
Justin.
Die Hard
Slice.
in there? Is Die Hard in there?
Oh, it
Wait,
better
isn't, but
fucking be in there.
I will work it in there for you guys. Die Hard is definitely in there, and that's a weird one because there are multiple Die Hard.
I don't know
games,
if they'll
but
do it
yeah.
again, and like I don't know how many people who listen to us are in the Austin area, but they did a script reading of Die Hard for Christmas last year,
Amazing.
and I brought my mom to it, and it was like one of the best things that I've ever been to. Like one of the
Who's
most
the
artistic.
cast for that?
There's this really talented actor named Joseph Gorlock who played. Oh my god, my mind went blank.
John McClane.
John McClane, thank you. And
New York cop.
they had like a really small cast, and they were basically it was a radio play, so they had a live Foley artist. But they're
That's super cool.
and it was so it was
That
like
sounds
if they
fun.
do it again this year, I'm hitting you get both up to
I want to
fucking
do
do
it.
it. Yeah,
That sounds
it's so
fun.
good.
That sounds
It's
amazing.
a shame that Bruce Willis can't act anymore.
Very
Yeah.
It's
sad.
such
Very
a
sad.
rough scenario to be in.
But
But
we'll dig into that a bit next month. In the meantime, look out for Alien Resurrection next week, closing out the Alien series, and then we will see you all for a whole month of Christmas joy. Can't wait for it. It's going to
Great.
be a lot of fun.
I love Christmas movies.
Is that a sarcastic thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I figured it might
I
be.
love.
I swear to
Christmas
God, if
That's
we
a
watch
genuine
Elf,
one.
I'm gonna be crying.
Okay, well, get your hanky ready. All right, well, we will see you all next week. Alien Resurrection. See you then. Bye, y'all.
Bye.